Hello and welcome to NewsClick. Today we have with us Gautam Navlakha to look at the recent developments in Kashmir and the overall crisis in the state, which only seems to be worsening. So Gautam, welcome. And looking at the past few developments in the state, even in the past month or so, we see that yesterday President's rule was imposed, which is the first time this has happened since 1996. Then just a couple of days back, we had the Pulwama massacre, in which 7 civilians ended up losing their lives. This is just another in the long list of encounters in the state in which so many people end up losing their lives. And we had the Panchayat polls, which recently concluded, in which although somewhat higher turnout figures have been reported, but we see these are not uniform. There are parts of the valley in which there was no polling, and so many seats went uncontested. Then, of course, the state assembly, which was dissolved in very confusing and questionable circumstances. So the overall state of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, seems to be getting just more and more chaotic, we see. So do you think this really means any change, or will we just see more of the same?
Well, I guess we'll be seeing more of the same or rather more becoming worse than what we have already been experiencing. And seeing, witnessing before our own eyes. Because in the last 4 years, there has been a perceptible decline in every manner possible. And the very fact that last year in May, the Indian Army announced Operation All Out, and that so-called Operation All Out has carried on for 1.5 years itself is a testimony to that it's all things that have been tried before being tried again, where the results are not going to be any different. But before we come to the nitty-gritties of the actual situation, there are certain things that we have to keep in mind, Surangya. One is that when you have President's rule, then thanks to Governor Jagmohan's machination, I would say, because he recommended when he was governor in 1984 to the president to extend Article 249 of the Indian Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir, which was another nail in the coffin of autonomy in the whole process of hollowing out of autonomy that one had experienced. But what 1984 brought about is that the parliament acquired the right to even pass legislation which are part of the state list. Now, for a state which was supposed to enjoy a special relationship and autonomy, the fact that the parliament can enact, legislate on matters which come to the state list itself shows how problematic the relation between Jammu and Kashmir has been with New Delhi all this while and all these decades. So it's only mark of how grave the situation is, that after 70 years we are again trying out, we are carrying on along the same path of rejecting and being indifferent to political resolution and still taking recourse to coercive measures and primarily military suppression to resolve an issue which doesn't seem to be getting resolved in any way. On the contrary, it seems that the determination of the local population to stand up and resist remains extremely high, no matter what the electoral turnout says in the recently concluded local body elections, because even by their own count, it shows a complete, there is not much faith in the system left. Even the councillors who have been elected are being put up in hotels, protected, and they're in fact complaining of the fact that all the facilities and the wages and salaries and compensation packages they were promised haven't been lived up to, and they have a lot of complaints.
And of course, they're feeling a threat.
And if you can't even live or feel protected and secure amongst your own people, what kind of local representatives are they of their own people, which they claim to represent?
And we see that locals are also complaining that these are not even from the local population. A lot of them are apparently from Jammu.
They reside in Jammu. who were persuaded to stand and offered a lot of attractive packages. But everything costs money. And the very fact that these people have to be put up in hotels means that the government is incurring an expense of rupees 1.3 crores reportedly every month they would incur to just house them. Well secured. Where is the link with the local population? There is complete indifference. And it doesn't take much to realize that the nature of voting that has taken place is more localized. There are circumstances which favored casting of votes in some areas over others where there was complete boycott. In such a state of affair, the whole idea of holding election was not just to enable project an image of normalcy or some kind of governance taking place in Jammu and Kashmir, civilian governance taking place in Kashmir. It was also meant to enable Bharatiya Janata Party and RSS cadres to usurp a place in such a rigged exercise for which is what they have been gunning for a long time. The recent event, as you pointed out,
Pulwama massacre.
The Pulwama massacre. Now, the interesting thing about the Pulwama massacre, Surangia, is that the stories are contradictory of the officials themselves, the police. On the one hand, they claim that after the operations, when the army was moving out, one of the Casper vehicles came under attack from the mob, and the troops inside retaliated, in which 23 people were injured and 7 died as a result of those bullet injuries. Hospital records show that they were all the bullet marks were all on the upper torso of the body, which meant that they aimed to kill, apart from using pellet guns, tear gas and everything else. The other story put out by the same police department says that while the encounter was going on, people gathered from all sides, and the forces had no choice but to open fire. Now, the forces means 55 Rashtriya Rifles, 182 and 183 Battalion of the CRPF, and the Special Operations Group of the J&K Police, which is like a paramilitary formation. Huge force which was deployed there. We are told also that the encounter lasted just for 25 minutes. So this is a contradiction in itself, where one story, one version of the story is being contradicted by the same police by providing another version. The governor's, the statement that came out referred very categorically to these clashes having taken place post-operation. Now, whatever be the nature of the detail, the very fact that people have been turning out at encounter site, it's not a new thing, it's been happening since 2013 onwards. We have covered it in the previous interviews also for NewsClick. We have also carried reports of that in NewsClick's site on this issue. So it's not as if it's something happening for the first time. But when you have taken a decision that all civilians who are therefore non-combatants, even they are justifiable targets by sheer fact that they gather at encounter sites. I think it shows that now no distinction would be made between civilians and non-civilians, or combatants and civilians. So something which is intrinsic to rules of war is being denied, where even civilians, in the name of coming out and pelting stones at forces engaged in operations, are justifiable targets. And Indian Army officers have repeatedly endorsed this position, although others, again military commanders, have questioned this approach. But those who are serving right now, they have all come out in support of this policy. So the number of killings therefore have gone up. 2018 is remarkable because we have crossed nearly 529 total deaths, of which 145 are civilians. This is first time in 10 years. 2008 was the last time when casualty figures crossed 500. So 10 years down the line, we are back to the same and the numbers are increasing. So if Operation All Out was supposed to prevent something, stem something, arrest something, development from taking place, it's absolutely having the reverse effect. So rather than discourage, it is actually motivating people to defy even more and join ranks.
So it really takes us to the question that since the military never really stemmed down its pressure on the state, this pressure was supposed to result in the militancy going down, then why are we seeing so many people on the streets and so many militants? And then what is the solution then?
Let's be clear about it. When we talk about so many militants, the number of militants compared to 2001, say for instance, or around the millennium, were much higher than what they are. They don't exceed more than few hundred. They have crossed 300, but the 300 and plus militants keeping at bay, for which to fight them, you have 600,000 total armed soldiers or Jawans deployed. It's unprecedented. Obviously, it's not the militants who are the major target of this military operation. It's the civilians, it's the non-combatants who are being told to withdraw support and stop dreaming or even discussing the idea of Azadi. It's that which is the main aim. It hasn't succeeded in the last 30 years. It's not going to succeed even now, we know it. Well, Surangya, the unfortunate reality where Jammu and Kashmir is concerned is that successive governments of India, even those who came out with very verbose statements endorsing dialogue and committing themselves to anything short of Azadi and things like that, when it comes to actual negotiation, they have nothing to offer. Because under this dispensation, even to discuss autonomy is an anti-national act. Well, that's what our Prime Minister has declared. Timed with the appointment of a so-called interlocutor, if you remember, who seems to have, everybody seems to have lost interest. We don't even know what Mr. Dineshwar Sharma is up to doing and what his task is under the present circumstances. So, what is it that we want? We don't want political solution. RSS, BJP is committed to assimilation, which means just ensuring the complete decimation of Kashmiri identity. That is what their intention is. Then what is it that we have to offer? Nothing. So political dialogue has no place in the imagination of this dispensation that we have currently before us. They don't even pay hypocritical homage to a need for dialogue or anything. So if you don't have that, your military commanders still dream that there is a military solution available in Jammu and Kashmir. And therefore, Operation All Out should continue, despite the warnings of other wiser generals, it seems, who, because of the experience, have come out and warned that there can be no military solution, and that we have to decide, we have to acknowledge that it requires a political initiative and political intervention. I guess we are in for worse to come, it seems.
And we also see that the daily lives of Kashmiris are also facing so much impact because of all that is going on. We see that internet was shut down in the state for about, I think, 127 days. So how is all of this affecting Kashmiris today?
It's very interesting that the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce issued a statement when this 3-day strike after post-Pulwama incident happened. And they were posed this question also. And they responded by pointing out that there is no space left for Kashmiris to protest or express themselves, either on the street or through the media. They've been demonized by the Indian media. Their voices are rarely heard across. So they said the only thing left for us to do is to shut down our business and stay at home as a mark of protest, because there is nothing else left open. That is one part of the answer, which is very true, because if you take away the right of people to protest and express themselves, which are our constitutional guarantees, which don't operate in Kashmir quite evidently, then you're left with no choice but to then sit at home in protest and not come out, which is what they did. But there is something else that happens, that during this whole course of it, if the government shuts down internet for 127 days in 2018, thus far, what it means is that the government contributes its own bit also to disable people from, say, a student, from having access to internet to catch up with his studies. Okay. They all say, well, this is the way in which messages or rumors or people would gather and things like that. If they'd allowed people to gather and express themselves, then many of the things that we see happening may not be taking place, and they'll be able to go about their business and earn the living as they want to. But not only do they impose curbs on internet, you look at also physical encumbrances which are deployed in Jammu and Kashmir, especially in Kashmir, where movement of people becomes very difficult to negotiate through bunkers, through barricades, through checkpoints, through concertina wires, which are laid down on roads to prevent people from moving from one place to another. All this contributes to. So basically, what we have to realize is that there is no way in which people can go about their life and do something about it until and unless the fundamental issue is resolved.
There can be no question of returning to normalcy.
Exactly, until and unless there is resolution of the fundamental dispute, solution of the Kashmir question, as far as I am concerned.